things. In the process of we creating an application, we can do certain things like, we can also add the cookies. Means like set cookie. So now you will understand what is the concept of cookie. So cookie is something like, if you are storing some information about you in the client side, means there are two components here. The server, if let's say Facebook is there, there is a server. At the same time, there is a browser, say Chrome browser is there. User, when they are accessing into the server, they get some information from the server, and they store it. At the same time, they get it. So just imagine any time when you are already logged in to the Gmail. So don't you think like every time you are logging to a new website, they will ask, hey, can I log in with the Gmail? You don't do very often Gmail login every time. Throw it like Gmail login. So once you do, the session will be there in the backend in the browser, right? So those kind of things are called as cookies. That is called as information. If that information is stored at the server side, it is called as session information. If it is stored at the client side, it is called as a cookie. If you want to do that in Flask, so we need to do it a simple way. As we done in the previous example, so we can again create a small application. So here what we need to do, earlier we used to return the HTML, right? Along with that, we can create a make response and we can take as a response, okay? For that response, we can do a set cookie. Like this, we can add multiple things also, but cookie is one thing that we can add to it. So if you do like this, you can add any cookie. Means next time at the client side, whenever they make any use of this thing. In this application, I am not using because I am not creating a UI specific application. We are morely focused in the backend, right? So that's why I'm just showing you how to set the cookie. But when you are working in the real time, so if you are working in the UI side, then you can make use of this cookie in the front end, like in say React or Angular or Vue.js or something. Next one is like in terms of the routing, the next one important thing I just want to tell you is that in the yesterday also we have seen one application. We have some endpoint. So this is the default endpoint without any routing. So the default routing. And if you give user slash so and so, you get it. But you just give user, you don't get it, right? That we know. And how the application starts? When you mention like, so app.run. When you go to production, you should not mention the debug equal to true, but others we can mention. And apart from this, if you see what else we can do, if you see the host, we can specify the host and we can specify the port. We can specify the port. So till now the port is like by default 5,000, sorry here. And if you specify the port, you can specify that and all this information, whatever you want. And if you want to run it in multi-threading is equal to true or not. Then if you do a multi-threading, means like multiple threads will execute and serve the application. All that information we can write here. So what is that I am showing newly here in this thing is that same like what you have users. And if you want to use this thing and if you want to test till now what's happening, if you want to run, how we do? You go to the terminal, you need to first start the virtual environment as I told you. So for that I told, right, we already created a virtual environment. We need to navigate to the directory. After navigating, we can say that ls-la. I started virtual environment. It started with a dot. That's the reason. If you just do ls, you won't get it. -m. How to start a virtual environment? /scripts. I'm in Windows, that's why scripts. If it is in Linux or Mac, /bin/activate. If I do, now the virtual environment was activated. Now I need to run this specific file, Python b so and so, d so and so. If I execute, you see it started this one. A production server is there. So this is how you go to the endpoint and access these things, right? So that's what till now we know. If I just walk through that, you can see that this document carries a cookie. And if you see the, anything, there is something called as inspect. If I go to the inspect, so here you can see all the information, what are the user has done. And I don't want to focus too much on the back front end side, because like that's where, but what are the files you passed, the index.py, so and others. You see here, you didn't pass anything like a index.js or something. So no HTML file is passed. We just did a small thing. So that's why text came as it is. But if you pass like a files, all the files will come. And even the cookie is also there and everything is there here. Okay, these were like the built-ins which are coming. Okay, so which is nothing to do with us like that. Now going back to this, how can you test this particular thing is working? You cannot ask anyone to just see in the UI and just verify that it is working. There should be some kind of validations, right? When you're saying like this will work like this. So for testing that kind of things, we have, so with app.testing, so context, we can do like, so URL for of index means it will print the what are the URL for index. Index means what? Index is this one. So this URL for is a function for getting the endpoint for a given function. You see, for every endpoint, there are two things involved. One is the endpoint. So, and other one is this function. So instead of referring to this endpoint, they refer to the function which does this. So URL for of index means this index function, what is the endpoint related to it? So that one, right? It will give it. So if I ask now, hey print, okay. So, and similarly, if I go for this URL, this is very interesting. This time for this, so first one is like you observe, it has only one function, it don't have any input. That's why I just passed the function name as it is. And for the second one, you see this one is taking one more input. That's why I did a user and some username I passed. Then say John, if I passed, it should be like, outputs will be like this. Means dynamically during the process, if you want to work on this, this is how it will help us. Hope it's fine. So if I do the same thing for another URL, means like instead of a John, something like, so if I do Uday, so it will say like user/Uday. So whatever is coming, if I just do it, you can observe that. So whatever is coming, so it will come as it is with the context and so and so. So like this, you can test. Of course, I can create a purely, test-driven development, test separately and do it. But if you want to use it also, you can use. That's the reason in some of the applications, we will make use of this concept of URL for. To understand more about this URL for usage, so let me give you one last example to understand what is this endpoint and what is this registration. So one more example to say here is that, you see, so same like in the previous example, I will take the values. Coming to the previous, here just you placed a endpoint. For this endpoint, you didn't write any, of the registration. So here, if you see, we mentioned explicitly that endpoint is equal to home. Means earlier when you worked with the index because the function directly, because this endpoint no one will write in general, but if you write it, so when you did URL of home, it will just go to it instead of URL of index. In the same fashion here also, I mentioned here at a endpoint of profile I give. And as this function expects one argument, you can pass it. So like this, we can capture the routing and we can do whatever we want. Okay, fine. So till now we have done these things. Next. So these were like the basic views. But in real time, so Flask has matured a lot in the past few years. So people are doing something much better than that. So I created you some applications. So, The basic applications I created, a calculator application I created, fine. So the next thing that we need to understand here is about within the Flask apps. Yeah, there are something called as Flask views. The Flask views. What is the Flask views? How does we can use it? Means till now we are developing everything on our own in the very basic way. Say, let me do like a hello world here. Small function to make it easy for you to understand. Let me copy this path and open it again. Folder. You see a new environment is opening. So it doesn't mean that we are creating a new folders. So we're just focusing on our things. So it's clean, right? You can understand more clearly. So within that, I created a new folder. And here I want to tell it. Okay. Say, I am writing first.py. Okay. First.py. So I wrote one function. And here the beauty of Flask is that it's not the name that matters. You can write anything for that matter, but the way things are working will be different. Till now we are importing Flask and you are working on it from Flask so and so like that. And now I will do what? There is something called as flask.views. For the first time we are doing flask.views. Till now we are doing like from Flask import Flask, the same thing. Okay, if you want like that also we can do from Flask. From Flask, small letters, import Flask. So this one till now. So we are doing this views. And so in this, what we can do is that instead of you creating an endpoint and all these things, so there is a built-in things. So in the Flask, there are something called as the views, right? Flask views. Using that Flask views, we can do something. Class view. View. So now the concept changes. Till now we are writing ordinary functions and we are writing an @ symbol in the top and we are doing a routing. But for the first time, I do something different. For the class, I do like this: flask.views.methodView. And I'm saying like self.command equal to none and return is hello world. Now, after doing that, so we define the functions separately and the routing separately. So till now we are doing things like that, and we are doing a app.addView route of. So the view function view.asView of main. So this is like something which is the common thing that we do. After doing that, so we should write like the app.run. Earlier, you remember, we used to write the function means we used to write the app and then we need to start means we used to do app.start run like this, right? The same thing, but here we do like this. Means like same app.run, if you can observe, app.run. But before that app.run, so we do like app.debug, app.debug, and we do it. Okay. So first I need to do a debug and then need to do debug app.run. So if you see now in this example, so where I am, d views cd a hello world. Okay, Python. So a so and so. So first.py. Now I need to run this application. So it is saying that you are not there because earlier we created a virtual environment. Now we came out of it. Again, we need to use the existing virtual environment or a new way. So now I will take this opportunity to tell you how do you create a virtual environment. So this is another way of doing. So there is another way of doing a virtual environment. Either you can use the same way or you can use the other way. Say I just want to make use of something called as pipenv. So pipenv, how do you create it means? So install pip env. This is another way of creating a virtual environment. If I do pip env using that, there were like brief steps actually. If you want to create a virtual environment using pip env, process I will tell. So virtual environment creation .md. So virtual environment can be created in 3 ways I told. So the most common thing is venv that we know till now. So the next is like pip env. The next popular is like poetry. So now I will take this opportunity to tell the second one. So these were the steps which are needed for if you want to do the pipenv based virtual environment creation. If you want to do, these were the steps actually. So first, anything if you want to do, first we need to install it. So pip install, we did it. So after that, like pipenv install means it will like create the shell. You see now in the current directory ps-la, even in that case, you see what are you seeing the same, the file and this one. Now if I do pipenv we installed, then if I do like this, for the first time it will say like this, because virtual environment, this the Windows tab is already there, right? If I close this, so VS Code and open again, it will work. So or else sometimes if you feel like this, then we can do python -m and do it. Even if I close also it works, because just now I installed, right? It will take some time for the registry to understand. When you close the session of the command line and open again, it will understand. But if you want in due course, you can do like this. So in this like this, it is saying that no module named pnv. So then what we can do? So pip python -m. So pip install. So pip env. If I do, it will do it. It is saying like, requirements already satisfied. See, something is missing, so that it is installing now. So once it is installed, we can open the shell. Then we can do a install. So means like it will run. Similarly, if you wanted dev tools, means for the main application, let's say you want certain things, but for the linters and others, if you want some developer related tools, you can do it. So like this. So it is doing the extra installation which are needed. Then once it is done, we can make use of it. So this is how I create a virtual environment. And after coming here, I think I can mark it as like a app. That's the best way we can understand. What I'm trying to say here is that compared to the earlier way of traditional doing, where you create a function-based views, these are called as function-based views. So instead of that, we are going now with a class-based views. So this is what here, class-based views. You know the concept of get, to retrieve something. The moment you open anything in a browser, anything by default opens in a browser, it's a get call. And if you are writing some form and submitting something, those are also like this. And see, it was failed because like if I'm doing for at the global level, I need to add this extra flag, right? Underscore user. If you're doing the installation within the virtual environment, you need not add it. But this sometimes based upon the permissions that you'll ask. See, now it was installed. Now after installation, what is the other thing? So I need to do pip pnv install. So pip install pnv is different. After that, second step, I'm doing like this. Then you see in this directory, two files are created. One is a pip file. Okay. In this pip file, it is saying what is the source from where I am getting. Generally, whenever you do installations, pip install means where it will come from. This is the website from where it will come. But sometimes if you are in a financial organizations or some kind of organizations, so they have their own repository. They will take all these Python files or executables or anything modules and they store in the internal repository. So from that, in that case, we need to mention here that internal repository name. And if you are installing from the internal repository, so using a pip install, say that pip env or whatever the module you do, and you do a -i and give that path, custom path, http colon slash something, your organization name, and if you have a repository, private repository, you give that. And it is saying SSL verification is needed and packages and others. At this moment, I didn't do anything else, right? So that's why it's happening like this. Now, I want to check, like, I showed you the app. You know, you created a virtual environment. Right now it is there. Piplog file will have this kind of environment, JSON file. So, but we didn't start the environment. We created. Sir, earlier when we created the virtual environment using .vanv, we have a folder, right, where everything is storing. Now in this case, where it is storing, sir, means these will store in your temp location separately, not in your code. In the user's temp location, it will store. That's okay. You need not worry about it. Now, how do you start, sir? So pip env shell, the third command, pip env shell, if you do, you can activate it. If I activate it, again, I told, right, I am not closing the terminal. Sometimes this problem comes. You just do like this, it will work. Now, did you see a new virtual environment which is having a name of a hello world is created? Who asked to create a hello world? Because it is in the path of a hello world, it is done. But if you want any custom name, you can write after the pipenv install, you give the name. It will create with that name. So somehow virtual environment is created. Now again, I want to come to this application. I want to run. So if I say Python space, so a underscore app. Now we created a virtual environment, but did we install Flask? No. So should we use like a pip install Flask or pipenv install Flask? So pipenv install Flask. It is saying like pipenv is not recognized. Again, Python -m like this. What is saying? No module named pipenv, because we have gone within the virtual environment, right? So again, it don't need it within that. It need. If I do like pip install Flask within this. So with pipenv, we created a virtual environment. Think like a container. You entered into that container. Then you don't need there within it. You can just do a pip install. But one thing happens is like, if you do an ordinary pip install, it will be very fast. It will take extra checks. That's why it will be slightly more, it will take more time to do. It's not my bandwidth issue or something else. It is something to do with the pipenv, which will does the extra job. That's the reason the moment it installed, if I can reload these things, goes others, and if I can open again, you see where, did you see it packages are not coming here, whether I do here or here. So that is pip install I did. If the same way, if I do like pip env, okay. So first I need to do inside also pip install. So pip env, and after that, like, with pipenv if I install, then you can see it. You see, within that virtual environment, I did an ordinary like pip install Flask. So, but here in the pip file or so and so, it is not coming, right? So then what I did, within the virtual environment, again I'm installing pipenv such that I came into it, and with pipenv I will install. So what is these extra steps are means? In an ordinary way, you create a virtual environment, you manage everything, and you have a requirements.txt where you store all the dependencies. So dependency management is the most crucial thing when you create any project. In the same fashion here, you don't write this pipenv file or pipenv log file. So means sometimes in the previous example I also showed, you just installed Flask, but see how many modules were installed, and your Flask has one application version, and it is having a dependency on all other modules. If any of these modules dependency version was changed, then it will be an issue. That's why we need to maintain it. So what I'm coming back to here is that in the first case, I installed with pip install Flask, right? When I did a pip install Flask, so your pip file is not updated. Then what I did, I have gone within the virtual environment. So you don't have a pipenv inside. So install that. Then now I am doing with pip env install Flask. Instead of directly with pip install, I am doing with pip env install within it. Now did you see it came, right? So it is saying that, hey, you are comfortable with any version. You didn't specify a particular version. That's why it is a star. So after that, if you want like a particular version, I can mention that. Say, what is the version of pipenv? Say like, so pip list, I can say, I get the things which are installed right now. Within this module, did you see? So same like in the earliest, apart from that, the basic virtual environment, other setup tools, pipenv, all others came, right? So that's a difference. And now you have Flask has some version. When you are installing, you didn't install Flask equal to some version. So that's why it did a star. And if you want to install if with a particular version, so we can specify like this. If I specify like this 2.2.3 I want, did you see? It is saying like equal to 2.2.3. So means like or like so should be greater than that or less than this. If you mention that, it will do. And also it is mentioning Python 3.11. If you see a typical requirements.txt, can you know that like what Python version they are using? What are the other dependencies? Nothing else. So you should tell like which version you are using. It will just tell about only the dependencies. It won't tell which Python version you used and others. Whereas if this ppnv or like next poetry, this all does a lot better things. That's why for better requirement management, we use it. Now coming back to where we started. So this application. Now we are somewhere. So if I say Python space a so and so, now the application is started. Same like this, endpoint is there. The default endpoint you mentioned. So you wrote like main as viewers main. Main means the main application. So if I just go there to the directory, you can notice it. You can see hello world is there because I didn't place any endpoint. So if I write something else also, it's not found because I mentioned only one endpoint right now. So coming back, you understood a very simple application till now. Now we try to mature it, this application further. Okay, so we wrote like a small application to do the things. Now let me go for the application two, some second application I want to do. Say like B, some application I'm writing, and I want to reuse the same thing. Okay, just I to make the better use of the time. I'm just doing, but generally people don't use that. Every application we create a separate virtual environment and do it. So I need to just come outside. So ls, I need to go to the B application. I am there here. Now here I need to create one more application. Same like what we done earlier. Okay. So in this case, I want to create another application right now. So app.py. This is a general convention for any Flask app. So whenever you're doing import Flask, we also do like import flask.views. Flask.views views. App is equal to, as we imported the absolute, so name of so and so. Or if you want to write a name of a specific things, so something like dummy app, something. So this name will help whenever you're doing logger objects and other kinds of content things related. And similarly, when I'm creating a view, class view, what are the view? So I want to create flask dot, so views dot method view. If I create like this, so within that I define this time two things. This time a get and a post also. Earlier, remember, I just returned an ordinary string. If I do a HTML also, I can create a separate HTML and do also that also, This time I'm creating a render template. So there also I did a render template. So here I'm saying like render HTML. I told if you want to have a HTMLs, even in the function based views or class based views, we need to have a folder called as templates. Under the templates, we need to create this file called as index.html. So for the index.html, we need to mention what should be the things. So don't worry. So it's not a big deal about HTML. So whenever you're working with the as a backend developer, front-end people will be there to help you. But if not also, it's not a big deal. So it is an ordinary document only, which is having the header tag, which in the header tag, we will have two things. One is the head and body. Head tags are related to the browser. When you open any browser, in the top, you will see certain things like, title, etc. If you see any browser, you will understand that. Say in the browser, in the top, you are seeing like 404 not found, PPNV Google search, so 123 so and so. This is called as a browser related title. So browser related information, if you want to do anything, so head or like that, so we use that head tag. And similarly, if you want to implement anything to the body, means content, that's the others. In this case, see here, we are saying episode 2 something. So here in the body, we are mentioning some content. Whatever you mention, it will come. And within that, so we are mentioning some form, HTML form. Form means like it will give a block, like a text block, and some expression will be there, and you need to submit it. When you submit, it goes to a post request to this endpoint. So, and also I told there is something called as Jinja syntax, I told. So Jinja means like, so don't you think it's like a ordinary for loop? With message equal to get flasked applications, means some function I'm executing, and within that I am doing some if messages, I want to get the results like that. So with this context management, I am trying to do something within this. So don't you think like it is something like this? Within this only I am printing. So don't you see like it is something like a Python syntax only you are seeing, right? Things like, in fact, it's not a Python, but it seems so for us. So that's because of it. So for everything, it's like a with context manager. Within that, we have like if condition. With context manager, within that we have an if condition. Within that you have a message. So this is actually structure. It was gone bad there. So, but this is how it will be. Okay. So I created something now. Now, how do I access it? So same thing. If I start this application, we can try that. If you see Python app.py, every time when you're starting an app.py, be careful, okay, what you are starting, because like you can go in different directory and start an app. You think like your work is not happening, so be careful about it. So in this case, I think we are in the same directory. Yeah, same templates and same pwd present working directory. So fine, I started app.py, but nothing is starting. So is that way that you start? No. If you want to start an application, first of all, we should have this extra two things, right? So in this case, we have two things, like a get call is there, post call is there. Means get means it will show the page. Post means after showing, if you enter something, the action should come back to the server, right? That is a post call. And if you want to do that, you give a endpoint. Because here every time you didn't mention the endpoints, you are mentioning endpoint here. Then you wrote like which view and what are the methods. So instead of, if you, when debugging, it's easy, because if you go for an ordinary application, if you want to check like, slash something got an issue, you need to check the entire code where this endpoint is there and what is the things related to it. Rather, in the class-based views, all definitions will be one place. So all the routings will be one place. So some people will write away separate functions also to make it much more easy for understanding when you go for a big application. So, but I wrote it now. If I execute again, you can see it is endpoint which is working. If I go back to the server, you can notice that. You see now, earlier you remember I told in the header there is a episode 2 something. You got it. In the browser also you got the things. So when you enter something, okay, I enter to execute. If I execute, it is saying name is not defined. Means some issue happened here down the line. If I go back to my browser, you will understand. Means what are the value that you gave, it is taking as it is. So I gave some alphanumeric, right? It is thinking that alphanumeric is some value and it need to give. But when it try to evaluate, it is not a built-in object or something. So that's why it didn't do. But it will do for other cases. So means if I go back this time and say this time, if I say 2 plus 3 minus 4, 34 by 4, 34 something again, it will execute. What is saying? The session is unavailable because no secret key is set. So this is most important thing. Means once you open the application and if you are not setting the thing, then it will not work. What is this concept of session, sir? Why we need to use it? So session means like if you don't do session, then what happens? If some issue came, I just reloaded and did it right. Maybe sometimes the application is expired or something will happen, but people will use it. So to avoid that, if someone has don't have access to certain pages, so there are some issues like cross-site scripting, etc. can happen. To avoid that, yes. So see here, the session is unavailable. It is saying. So this is one problem. So to maintain the uniqueness of a session, we should have some unique value such that it will do it. So now in the application, if I create something called as app.secret is equal to, so something, some big secret. So generally, no one will write like this directly. So we should write someplace else, and we should get in the runtime. In the main code, it should not be there. So that's what the main intention. But you should have some secret such that things will be easy. Okay, now I created like this. Okay, now I'm running again. You notice it that you got it. I give the same example. I got it. So I give the same something else again. I didn't do an exception handling, but I did something. You got it? Every time I do the result, I'm getting the answer right. So if I do something else wrong, it is throwing an error, of course, name error, because I didn't handle the exceptions. So here I didn't do the exception handling. But why, sir, this much error is coming? Our code entirely is showing. It's because I did place here debug equal to true. If I say debug equal to false, because in production we should not do. Even the code was broken, let it be broken. If you show that the problem is at this position in the code, then next time what happens? If they want to do anything, it's easy, right? For them also. What is saying? Hey, you did a reload, so things are not working. You see, it worked again. Fine. Let me open again. It executed. This time if I give a dummy value, so previously also code was broken. So now I did a debug equal to false. What is the difference now? When I did debug equal to true, you saw the entire stack, right? Which function failed, where exactly failed, it is showing everything. So when I did like this, it said internal server failure. You understood something happened at the server side. But did you see any code here? If you are like a hacker, so you cannot get anything from it, right? But if I place debug equal to true, that's what be careful. So whenever you are going for a production code, so be careful about this. You should never do like this. Okay. Next, after this, if I have something else, so like this, we can create a, okay. I can create multiple applications like this. So for you to understand, so some things which can help you. At the same time, Flask is not just designed for these things. With Flask, we can also create applications like REST APIs. So Flask API, if you want to create. If I do like app.py this time, till now you're creating a browsers, you're asking some things like that, and you're using. So what is the difference between an application and this one? An application is designed, say like a web application. In the browser, you can see. Till now, I'm doing basic HTML because we are not into the React or JavaScript or something. But if you are more into there, so better UI we can create and you can interface it. But if you are having like a third parties, like say a framework like React or Angular or React in the front end, and from the back end they just want the data. For that, we can from the back end, means from the database or somewhere else, we can pass like a JSON or something. From the front end, they can consume it. So that is what the simplest thing. Now, if you want to do like that, there are certain things called as JSONify and request. JSONify is something interesting. For the first time you're seeing. So here also we create an application and we do it. So coming back to the again the function-based views that we have seen till now. So if you want to create a record, so here we need to understand 4 operations. There are something called as CRUD, means create, read, update, delete. If you have a database, you will do only these 4 actions. Not only database, any application if you have. If let's say you have Facebook, you can add a comment, you can read a comment, you can update a comment, you can delete a comment. Similarly, post also same thing. For every object, you can do these 4 actions, right? These are called as CRUD operations. CRUD operations. For these CRUD operations, so there are HTTP methods. HTTP methods are related. HTTP methods are like get, so get, put, post, put, delete, like that. Okay. And these related things are like, for creating, we need to have post. You remember this ones clearly. If you want to read one or more, it is get. If you want to update an existing things, there are like put. And also, if you want to update a specific field, there is something called as patch. And if you want to delete something, we have delete. So these were the operations. So we have like HTTP codes, and for that we have the CRUD operations. This is what very, very importantly you need to remember. So whenever user is giving some hit, so we need to create something. Whenever user is stopping, you want to stop something. So